It's funny, isn't it? How people look at you and decide who you are in a heartbeat. For years, ever since Arthur passed, I was just Elara. Quiet Elara. The widow Elara. That simple woman, I once heard Mrs. Henderson from down the street whisper to her friend, not quite quietly enough, at the bakery. It stung, like a little bee sting to the heart, but I didn't let it show. What was the use? Arthur and I, we never cared much for fancy things. We had enough, more than enough as it turned out, but we found our joy in simpler stuff. His laughter, the smell of the roses he grew in our little garden, the warmth of his hand in mine when we'd watch the sunset from our porch swing, those were the riches we counted. He was a clever man, my Arthur. Built a software business from nothing, way back when computers were still big, clunky things that filled a room. He sold it years before he got sick, and he always said, "Elara, my love, we have enough for 10 lifetimes. Let's just live this one well." And we did. We lived in our modest little house in Oak Haven, the same one we bought when we were young and full of dreams. It wasn't grand, but it was home. It held our memories in its walls, in the worn patches on the wooden floor, in the scent of old books and lavender that always seemed to linger. After he was gone, the silence in the house was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. The garden felt a bit wilder without his touch. The roses still bloomed, but they seemed to miss him too. I kept things simple. I wore simple clothes, comfortable, practical. I drove our old, reliable car. I tended the garden, baked bread, read my books. I suppose to outsiders, especially the newer folks in town like the Hendersons who only knew me as the quiet widow, I did look like a simple woman. The Hendersons had moved into the Miller place, the big new one at the end of the cul-de-sac, about a year after Arthur passed. They were all shiny cars and designer labels. Mrs. Henderson, Beatrice, always looked like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. Mr. Henderson, Robert, always talked loudly about his investments and golf scores. They were a different breed. They'd sometimes see me at the grocery store or the post office. Beatrice would give me that little tight-lipped smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes, and a nod that felt more like a dismissal. "Oh, Elara dear, how are you managing?" she'd ask, her voice dripping with a kind of pity that made my skin prickle, as if managing a small house and a garden was some Herculean task I was barely up to. I'd just smile back, a real smile, I hoped. "I'm doing all right, Beatrice. Thank you. The hydrangeas are lovely this year, aren't they?" I'd try to find common ground, but it was like trying to plant seeds in concrete. The local charity events were always a bit of an ordeal. Arthur and I used to donate anonymously, substantial amounts, to the library fund, the children's hospital, the animal shelter. He always said, "The good deed is its own reward, Elara. No need for trumpets." After he died, I continued, through our foundation. But when I'd attend the fundraising dinners, in my best but still simple dress, I'd see the looks. The polite nods, the quick glances away. I wasn't part of their glittering world. I remember one particular garden club meeting. Beatrice Henderson was presenting her prize-winning orchids, all exotic and flamboyant. She made a comment about how some people just prefer the, well, more common varieties of plants. Her eyes flicked to me for a split second. I had brought a simple bouquet of my Arthur's favorite old-fashioned roses, their perfume sweet and true. I felt a blush creep up my neck, but I just held my roses a little tighter. They were beautiful to me. They held love. It wasn't that I craved their approval. Not really. But it hurt, in a quiet, persistent way, to be so thoroughly misunderstood, so easily dismissed. It felt like they were dismissing Arthur too, the life we'd built, the values we held dear. The years passed. 5 of them since Arthur left my side. The grief was a softer ache now, more a companion than a tormentor. I missed him every day, with every beat of my heart. His photograph on the mantelpiece, his eyes full of kindness and laughter, was my constant comfort. The 10th anniversary of when he sold his company was approaching. Before he died, he'd made me promise something. "Elara," he'd said, his voice weak but his eyes bright. "When the time comes, I want you to do something for yourself. Something big. Something that makes you feel alive. Use some of that rainy day money we never touched. Go see the Northern Lights. Or visit that little village in Italy you always dreamed of. And don't you dare feel guilty about it." He'd set up everything, meticulous as always. The foundation, the investments, and a separate account, just for Elara's adventures, he'd called it, with a twinkle in his eye. For a long time, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. It felt wrong, somehow, to indulge when he wasn't there to share it. But his words echoed. "Don't you dare feel guilty." So, I decided. Italy. That tiny village clinging to a cliffside. The one I'd seen in a faded postcard years ago. It was time. I also had some business for the foundation to attend to in Milan first, a children's art project Arthur would have loved. Arranging the trip was different. I usually booked my own simple holidays, a quiet cottage by the sea maybe. But this was bigger. Arthur's old assistant, bless her heart, still helped manage the foundation's affairs. When I told her my plans, she said, "Mrs. Sterling, for a trip of this nature, with the foundation business and then your personal travel, Mr. Sterling had certain arrangements he preferred for long distances. For security and convenience." I remembered Arthur mentioning it vaguely. He'd sometimes had to fly to meetings in different countries when his company was growing. He hated the fuss of commercial airports, the delays, the lack of privacy to work. So, he'd occasionally chartered a small jet. It sounded so extravagant to me then, and it still did. "Oh, I don't know, Sarah," I'd said. "A regular flight would be fine." "Mrs. Sterling," Sarah said gently, "it's already provided for. It's more efficient, especially with the tight schedule in Milan for the foundation meeting. Arthur would insist." I trusted Sarah, and I trusted Arthur's judgment. So I agreed, feeling a strange mix of trepidation and a flicker of something else. Anticipation? The day of my departure arrived. It was a Tuesday. I'd packed a simple suitcase, my comfortable walking shoes, a few nice dresses for Italy, my books. Tom, a kind man from the village who sometimes helped with heavy garden work, offered to drive me to the local airfield. It wasn't a big international airport, just a smaller place that handled private planes and regional flights. As Tom loaded my suitcase into his old pickup truck, I saw the Hendersons out in their driveway. Beatrice was directing a landscaping crew, her voice sharp and clear. Robert was polishing his already gleaming convertible. They both glanced over. Beatrice gave her usual curt nod. Robert just looked past me. Just simple Elara, heading off somewhere, probably to visit a cousin in the next state, they likely thought. I smiled faintly to myself. If they only knew. Not that I wanted to show off, heavens no. That wasn't Arthur's way, and it wasn't mine. But there was a tiny, mischievous part of me that wondered what they'd think. We pulled up to the airfield. It was quiet. Just a few small planes parked on the tarmac. Tom helped me with my bag. "Have a wonderful trip, Mrs. Sterling," he said, his weathered face kind. "You deserve it." "Thank you, Tom. I'll bring you back some nice Italian biscuits." He grinned. "I'd like that." As Tom drove off, I stood there for a moment, clutching my handbag, feeling a little overwhelmed. Then a sleek black car pulled up, and a man in a neat pilot's uniform stepped out. "Mrs. Sterling, I'm Captain Davies. Welcome. We're ready. For you?" He gestured towards a plane parked a little way off. It wasn't a jumbo jet, of course, but it was impressive. sleek, white, with elegant lines. It looked like something out of a movie. My heart did a little flutter. This was really happening. And then, I saw them. A shiny black SUV had just pulled into the small parking area. Out stepped Beatrice and Robert Henderson, along with another couple I vaguely recognized from one of the town's more exclusive social circles. They were laughing, dressed in expensive casual wear, looking like they were off on a glamorous weekend getaway. Beatrice spotted me first. Her eyes, perfectly made up as always, swept over me, my simple traveling coat, my sensible shoes. I saw that familiar flicker. Was it pity or just dismissal? She started to turn away to rejoin her group, probably to make some whispered comment. But then, her gaze followed Captain Davies, who was now taking my small suitcase and leading me towards the gleaming white jet. I saw her stop, mid-turn, her perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. She nudged Robert. He looked, then looked again. The other couple followed their gaze. Silence. 4 pairs of eyes, wide and disbelieving, were fixed on me. On simple Elara. I didn't look back at them directly. I couldn't. My cheeks felt warm. This wasn't what I'd intended, this public display. But I couldn't help but feel a strange, quiet satisfaction bubble up inside me. Not triumph, not arrogance, but just a sense of things being seen for what they were, for a moment. Captain Davies opened the door to the jet, and a small set of stairs descended. He offered me his hand. I took it, my own trembling just a little, and stepped up into the cool, quiet cabin. It was beautiful. Soft leather seats, polished wood, a little galley. It was more luxurious than I could have imagined. As I settled into a window seat, I couldn't resist one quick glance back towards the parking lot. The Hendersons and their friends were still standing there, frozen, like statues. Beatrice's jaw was, quite literally, slack. Robert was staring, his hand halfway to scratching his head. Their friends looked equally stunned. The engines began to hum, a low, powerful sound. The jet taxied, turned, and then, with a surge of power, we were accelerating down the runway. As we lifted into the air, soaring above Oakhaven, I looked down. At the patchwork of houses and streets. I saw the Hendersons' large house, the manicured lawn, and I saw my own little cottage with its slightly wild garden, looking small and peaceful from above. A flight attendant, a lovely young woman named Clara, offered me a drink. I asked for a simple cup of tea. As I sipped it, watching the clouds drift by, a wave of emotion washed over me. It wasn't just about the jet or the Hendersons' shocked faces. It was about Arthur, about his love, his foresight, his quiet way of taking care of me, even now. He wanted me to have this, to experience this, to live fully. The trip to Milan was productive. The foundation meeting went well, and the art project we funded was truly inspiring. Then, I traveled on to that little Italian village. It was everything I'd dreamed of. Cobblestone streets, flowers spilling from window boxes, the scent of baking bread and the sea in the air. I spent my days walking, reading, sketching, eating delicious food, and just being. I thought a lot about Arthur. I missed him terribly, but there, in that beautiful, peaceful place, it felt like he was close. I imagined him smiling, happy, that I was finally on one of Elara's adventures. When it was time to return, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. The jet ride home was smooth and comfortable. As we approached Oakhaven, I found myself wondering, just a little, what the atmosphere would be like. News, I've learned, travels fast in a small town. Especially news as unexpected as simple. Elara boarding a private jet. The first indication came a few days after I got back. I was at the local bakery picking up a loaf of rye bread. Mrs. Gable, who runs the bakery and knows everyone's business but is generally kind, gave me an extra warm smile. Welcome back, Elara. Italy, was it? Oh, it must have been divine. Did you fly comfortably? Her eyes twinkled. I smiled back. Yes, it was a lovely trip, Martha. Very comfortable, thank you. Then, Beatrice Henderson walked in. She stopped short when she saw me. For a moment, I thought she might turn and walk out. But then she took a breath and approached the counter, her usual confident stride just a little less. Sure. Elara, she said. Her voice was different, softer, almost hesitant. You're back. Did you have a nice time? Yes. Thank you, Beatrice. Italy was beautiful. There was an awkward pause. She fiddled with the clasp on her expensive handbag. I saw you at the airfield. That was quite the surprise. I just nodded, offering a small, polite smile. What was there to say? Your late husband, she continued, lowering her voice slightly. He must have been a very successful man. He was a good man, Beatrice, and yes, he worked hard. Another pause. Then she did something that truly surprised me. Your roses, she said, gesturing vaguely. In your garden. They always look so healthy. You must have a gift. This from the woman who'd subtly mocked my common flowers. Arthur taught me most of what I know about roses, I said, quietly. He loved them. She nodded, a strange expression on her face. It wasn't friendliness, not yet, but the condescension was gone, replaced perhaps by a grudging respect. Or maybe just confusion. Over the next few weeks, things were different. The pitying looks were gone. The whispers I sometimes overheard were no longer about poor, simple Elara. Now, they were curious, speculative. Did you hear about Elara Sterling? Apparently, her husband was some kind of tech tycoon. A private jet. Can you imagine? Some people, the ones who had always been kind, remained kind. Old Mrs. Peterson from the library still asked about my books. Tom still offered to help. In the garden. Their interactions with me hadn't changed, and I was grateful for that. Others, like the Hendersons, were navigating a new, awkward reality. Robert Henderson, when he saw me at the hardware store, actually tipped his hat and mumbled a, "Good day, Mrs. Sterling." It was almost comical. One afternoon, I was tending Arthur's roses, pruning away the spent blooms. Beatrice Henderson walked by, taking her little poodle for a walk. She stopped at my fence. "Elara," she said, her tone still a bit stiff, but not unkind. I wanted to apologize." I looked up, surprised, secateurs still in hand. "Apologize? For what, Beatrice?" She flushed slightly. For underestimating you. For being a bit of a snob, I suppose." She gave a wry, self-deprecating smile. "It seems my assumptions were rather off the mark." I put down my secateurs. "We all make assumptions sometimes, Beatrice." "Yes, but mine were particularly unfounded. Your husband, Arthur, I looked him up. What he achieved was remarkable. And for you both to live so quietly, it's admirable." I felt a warmth spread through me, not because she was finally acknowledging the wealth, but because she was perhaps starting to see beyond it, to the choices Arthur and I had made. We valued our privacy, Beatrice, and our peace. The money was a tool, a comfort, but it wasn't who we were. She nodded slowly. "I think I'm beginning to understand that." She looked at the roses. "They really are beautiful." "Thank you," I said. "Arthur would be pleased to hear you say that." We chatted for a few more minutes, about gardens, about the weather, about nothing in particular. It wasn't exactly friendship, but it was a start. A thawing. Life in Oakhaven didn't magically transform. I was still Elara. I still wore my simple clothes, drove my old car, baked my bread. The jet was a one-time thing, a means to an end for that particular trip, fulfilling Arthur's wish. I had no desire to live a life of flashy displays, but something had shifted. Not just in how others saw me, but perhaps a little in how I saw myself. Not as simple Elara, but as Elara Sterling, Arthur's wife, a woman who had loved deeply, lived quietly, and who carried a legacy of kindness and quiet strength. The Hendersons never became my closest friends, but the awkwardness eased. Beatrice would sometimes stop by the fence to genuinely admire the flowers. Robert would offer a proper greeting. They learned, I think, that wealth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, in the rustle of leaves, in a beloved garden, in the quiet continuation of good deeds, in the love that endures even after someone is gone. And me? I continued to live my life, filled with Arthur's memory. The private jet didn't change who I was, not fundamentally. But it did, in its own unexpected way, clear away some of the fog of other people's misconceptions. It allowed them, perhaps, to see me a little more clearly. Or at least to question their own quick judgments. Sometimes when I'm sitting on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I think about Arthur. I imagine him chuckling at the whole jet incident, at the, Hendersons' shocked faces. "Well, Elara, my love," I can almost hear him say, "that certainly gave them something to talk about, didn't it?" And I smile, because he was right. We had enough for 10 lifetimes. And we were living ours, just as we'd always planned, simply, quietly, and full of a love that no amount of money could ever buy, and no outward appearance could ever truly define. The jet was just a brief, shiny punctuation mark in a story that was always richer and deeper than most people knew. And that, I realized, was perfectly all right. The people who mattered, the ones who saw my heart, they knew all along. And Arthur, he knew best of all. That was all the riches I ever truly needed.